I'm excited about AI in the same way, and I look at AI or machine learning or whatever you want to call it in the same capacity where we always had analytics in a sense where we could Google or Bing something and we could look for statistics, but those weren't our statistics, right? And
Yeah.
then the analytics and the Power BIs came out, and now we have a strong grasp on what we've done the last 3 years or what our MRR is. And I look at AI the same way, whereas if you're using ChatGPT online or Bing Enterprise, while those are great tools, Copilot offers such a impact because it's your data.
You gotta let it down, 'cause you can work wherever now.
All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Work Wherever podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about AI, automation, the ability to work wherever so you can live every day like it is Saturday. And if you're a fan of Sydney, Sydney's not here today, but I do have good news. I have a better guest than Sydney, although the Sydney fans are scoffing at me right now. But I have a Microsoft MVP, and we're going to talk about remote work, because why wouldn't we here on the Work Wherever podcast? And we're going to talk a lot about the new technologies out of Microsoft. Obviously, we're talking Microsoft 365 because that's the world that I come from. And the guest that I have on today has a very similar background to myself in SharePoint development that has turned into this Copilot, Power Apps, total ecosphere of Microsoft 365 collaboration. He's an MVP. I am not. But welcome on in, Mr. Richard Harbridge. Hey, Richard.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
How are you, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah. Working remotely and enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? Who likes to sit in traffic, right? That's like the worst place to be. I've had to leave my house like 4 of the last 5 days, and it's just miserable. I don't know how people do it.
Audiobooks make it a little bit easier, but absolutely, it's not the best experience.
I do listen. I've listened to a ton of audiobooks. I have Audible. I've listened to like 4 or 5 books. They're great.
I'm a weird 3x speed person. I'm not joking. Like whatever, I think that's the max it always goes to. And I wish there was like a 4x because
Right.
it just
I listened to the Harmony book, The $100 Million Leads, on 3x.
That's a good one.
Yeah, because he talks slow, I feel like, in general. So I was like, speed. I need to speed. And then there was I listen to we're right there, man. Whenever I'm listening to videos, I need to speed it up. You know, get to the point. Or I start skipping around and then I get myself lost. That's never.
Everyone's gonna watch ours and be like, okay, let me put this at
right. We're gonna speed this one up, right? So, Richard, you're a Microsoft MVP. You're the Chief Technology Officer at 2to-Lead. And this bio says that you're internationally recognized expert in Microsoft 365 and SharePoint collaboration. So congratulations on the accolades.
Hey, I wrote some books and people invite me to do keynotes and seem to like what I say. So I think that's all that really happens there.
Yeah, which I'm one of them. I met you at the Shift Happen conference here in DC, and you were speaking on Viva Engage, I believe, and how to use Copilot in Viva Engage. And I was like, I need to talk to this guy. I feel like we're of the same mind and brain. So for those who are listening who are not familiar with Viva Engage, and maybe they understand it by something called Yammer, but can you just kind of give me a summary real quick of Viva Engage and the thought process behind the rebrand and release?
Yeah, so basically, in most organizations today, there's a need to connect in communities outside your working group. And so when you have that need, one of the solutions that is in the marketplace that's really highly adopted, it's actually, they don't share the official numbers, I think, publicly, but it's really, really high up there. And it's one of the top used apps on a daily basis, is Viva Engage, which was the Yammer acquisition and then evolved eventually to be a really integrated solution set. What stands out a little bit about Viva Engage is it's integrated with things like Outlook. So you can actually post to your storylines and other things. You can react, like, comment, reply, all that from Outlook, which is a pretty big differentiated benefit because it's all embedded in that. And as someone who loves Outlook, I appreciate that capability set a lot. And then the other thing that it has is it has sort of 2 core use cases. So the community piece, connecting with people outside your working group, learning, sharing, amplifying ideas. And then the other one is this idea of a storyline, which is a way for people to express their opinions, ideas, perspectives, and to share Some people are capital L leaders where they get like additional features that you would pay for a premium. And then they would get like Ask Me Anything events they could host. They could have, automatic followers. Like, so, your sales leader and your sales group automatically follows you. So there's some stuff like that you pay a premium for. It's quite cost effective. And then you essentially have everyone else who just has the ability to create rich video, articles, posts, all sorts of content, through their storyline.
So what would be the difference between, and I know this, but I want to hear you say it because I want to make sure that we're aligned here. But what would you say the biggest difference between Viva Engage or formerly Yammer and Microsoft Teams? Like, why would I use that
So
instead of going Teams?
there's this narrative that they used for ages called loops. So you kind of have like your inner loop. That's like your core working team, shared circle of trust, people you see all the time. You know them, at least in some way, working capacity. And then sometimes you have questions or you have scenarios where you want to connect with people outside your working group. It's good. It's a healthy thing. Even if you're remote, it's really important actually to create connections and understanding outside of your working groups. So you use communities and Viva Engage for that. So if you have loops, kind of rings, as you get further out, you get into Viva Engage territory. And as you get closer together, you get to Microsoft Teams territory. Now, Teams technically can scale to large teams, and there's good reasons for that. But that's actually a team scenario. You're actually meant like it's high velocity. People kind of know each other. Community stuff is very different. Like the way the notification systems work, the way the flow of information works is quite a bit different. It's all about being able to find things later. So there's a lot of things in topics and tagging and concepts like that in Viva Engage that isn't really in Teams. For a good reason, and it's the purpose of the platform. So, most organizations that have larger employee counts, 300 plus, they pretty much all should have Viva Engage if they don't. And then if you're smaller than that, my suggestion is always, of course, you should have a few communities, like baseline communities, but it's really about questions and answers and key concepts that are in Viva Engage that don't exist anywhere else in the organization today. And that's like, I have a question that I'm asking, I don't know who to ask it to, have a Q&A community, right? In a smaller organization. Great use case. If you're not used to Viva Engage, you're not sure how to roll it out, start just having a Q&A community. And then that becomes this awesome place to start to facilitate conversations that just don't have a home anywhere else, right? As an example.
Yeah, no, I love that. There is, everybody gets kind of annoyed by the amount of pings and notifications that Microsoft Teams can give you. So we've had a lot of customers and clients that we have will come and be like, well, I want a community where I can post announcements or I can post information and I won't get spammed with everybody's good morning today, right? So the Viva Engage platform, formerly Yammer, that platform is a little bit more laid back. You can have those water cooler talks conversations, whereas to your point where you're saying they're working remotely, the water cooler was a lot of people that was where they had their friends, is their working friends. And so how do you replicate that into a remote scenario? And Viva Engage is definitely trying to plug that gap a little bit.
Yeah, there's two patterns that are pretty active. First, I just want to note you can use it in a more traditional communication pattern, and there are lots of comms teams that use Viva Engage. Like there's this concept of like an authoritative community where only these people, their owners, can actually create posts. Everyone can reply, but like it's much more top down from a design philosophy. You can have obviously private public groups. We talked about leaders, so there is like you can even override people's notification preferences. There's a lot of stuff in the enterprise space. With great power comes great responsibility. You can do a lot where you don't use it in that, open way that we're describing. And some organizations prefer that. But what I will say is, the big changes that we've seen is that Storylines has changed how people work. One of the big gaps we have outside of meetings is that it's hard for people to connect with one another. And so a practice that kind of really permeated during the pandemic was you could message me, like we're working together, and then I want to like acknowledge your good work. But I'm just going to send you, instead of like a little message just saying, hey, awesome job on that call or whatever you did, I would record like a little snippet, a little video snippet. It's been in Teams for a long time. And I would say, hey, amazing job on that thing. And I do this little, like directly to you. And it is matter to me because I care. I really appreciate what you did. So I share that little video snippet. Maybe I put it in a bonus platform or something like that we do internally, but I'll share that to you. And then what is surprising is as I started to do that, my own staff would sometimes share a video back, and then I would feel more connected because they're like, well, thanks. It was only possible because and even though those are just messages we could have sent to each other, the video format makes it feel different. Right. And so one of the things that we've learned in Viva Engage with storylines is that people, when they use video, are actually satisfying some of those water cooler needs a little bit better, because they're like doing these little videos of like, hey, what's going on here? And then people are commenting, not the video like post, but the comments can have videos in them as well. And you see, again, challenge yourself the next time if you're using these tools, could I write this as a little video instead? Because it's not that scary, especially because you have Clipchamp and all these editing tools built in the platform now, since Microsoft acquired that company. Like, just use it and then post a little video, and you'd be surprised sometimes at like how it feels different, right? The nature of that, little connection isn't a little like icon or a little comment. It becomes something a little bit more, connecting. And so there's a little tactical tidbits like that, but I really love the way video and things like that can make us feel more connected, even when we're working remotely.
Yeah. We'll get into that in a second with working remotely and video, because I'm a big believer in remote work, and our business is a full remote organization. So I'm a full believer in it, that it can be done and everybody doesn't have to be in the same place. But keeping with Viva Engage for 1 second, is the conference that we were at, the Shift Happen conference, was heavy on Copilot. And so Copilot is the new AI or machine learning or assistant. It's the Clippy 3.0, whatever you want to call it, kind of assistant. And I believe, is it next month that Copilot is hitting Engage?
It's November 1st, for customers that are 300 seats and above are all enabled and have a direct pathway now to purchase and use it. And then I don't think I'm allowed to comment, but soon there's a plan to address the sub 300 target customers. They could have done a better job communicating that. That's all I'll say to that. And there's been some pushback there. I think very reasonable pushback, but it is technically available for those that are large enough.
Gotcha. Okay, so that makes sense, because we purchased, we have the 25 seat sales Copilot, and I was like, oh man, I saw Richard's thing. I'm gonna go create a post and Engage on using Copilot, and I couldn't do it. And I'm like, oh man, like what's going on here? So I just have to
Viva,
be patient.
it's like anything, it's always confusing. So the Microsoft Viva suite, it's like Viva Goals or other things, they have different times so that the Copilot experiences are lit up. If you own the Viva license, that empowers like the premium capabilities of that Viva suite, you'll get Copilot with that. So there's a different one. It's $30 user $30 per user per month. That is for M365. That's SharePoint, Teams, Exchange, Outlook. That's things like Word, PowerPoint, the Excel, Office applications. So that kind of stuff, Loop, all that stuff fits under this like $30 bucket. But what's nice actually is Microsoft, and not just them, but others in the industry, are figuring out the right pricing models. So Power Platform or Viva, it's included. And it makes sense, because most of the Copilot experiences make it more accessible. The Viva Engage Copilot experiences, most of it is like, a lot of us struggle with that blank page. And a lot of the Copilot experiences are designed to say like, hey, here's a trending conversation. Do you have any input? And I'll help you write, your post on it. I'll help you add images and connect it to questions and answers and other common, popular content around it. So it really facilitates getting your voice out there and giving you words to express yourself, which a lot of people struggle with. So between storylines making that easier, and then things like Copilot being included in that premium for capital L leaders or leaders that have this premium capability, then it increases the usage, adoption, and a bunch of other things, which again is great for all of us.
Yeah, there has been pushback, I guess, in certain circles around AI, the Skynet argument, and
Sure.
it's coming for our jobs and everything like that, which I've used. Anyone who's used ChatGPT knows that it's not totally 100. It's not coming for our jobs yet, right? So if it develops wings and it can talk to itself and then can do other things, then maybe someday. But right now, it's an assistant. It's a tool that we can utilize, and we can start the conversation, to your point. Whereas what I thought was so cool when you were showing the Viva Engage was, if I don't know what to say, I can kick Copilot and it'll help me get the conversation started. That doesn't mean that I have to post AI, but I can at least get an idea of how to communicate with my team if I don't even know what to say. If I'm saying, oh, I'm having a hard time creating a subject around X, Y, and Z, or using the right tonality.
Yeah, we all have different skills, right? So some of us like have linguistic backgrounds and have learned how to write academically and effectively and literature and all this other stuff. And some people don't have that skill. And so, for a variety of reasons, what AI essentially does, these co-pilots and these AI agents, is they give us access to skills we don't have. They could be technical skills like make a beautiful PowerPoint presentation or something like that, write a beautiful social post or something. And then they could be writing skills, right? And effective communication skills. And what's interesting is, you mentioned the job thing. So I want to be, I think there is real job disruption that is
Sure.
happening currently and will continue to happen with post-generative AI. And it's going to affect services sector a lot. And that's the majority of the US economy, right? Now, if we look at it from a macro view, it doesn't feel that disruptive because, if you think about it from 1910 or 1912, it's like, 20%, 30% of the economy, somewhere in between, I think it's 25%, was agriculture. Now it's 2%.
Mhm.
Do we feel that? Not really today. I'm not saying it didn't have a disruption effect, but like it was a natural transition as automation and things happen in agriculture. If we look at manufacturing, it's 9%, I think is the most, 2022 or something like that, numbers for the economy, but it was 32% back in, early 1912, whatever that was. So if we look at that, right, where did those jobs go? Most of those jobs went to professional services and, information work and all this other stuff. And so any major technology change like AI, it changes the landscape. The computer and internet both were major exponential changes. They changed the way we work, the way we deliver, the way we, think of stores and e-commerce, all that stuff changed. But it targets some industries and types of roles more than others. And I think that's what you're seeing is post-generative AI. We're seeing that impact on these, academic skills. It does eventually devalue some skills. It will, and it will increase the capabilities for more people to access those skills without necessarily the same time investments and things like that we need in the past. And we're seeing, 60% productivity gain in MIT and Harvard studies. That's with just GPT 3.5 and 4, which is the equivalent of like Bing Enterprise Chat, right? But with Copilot, you see a much more pronounced productivity gain because it uses your data, it uses your
Mhm.
relationships, it has understanding of thousands of app, capabilities inside of those apps. Like I don't even know half these things it can do in Word or PowerPoint, right? And I'm a pretty savvy PowerPoint and Word user. So what you'll see is there's a productivity gain that is significant enough that it means we can produce more. For some companies, that does mean, hey, like, why would I keep growing my staff? Unfortunately. Other companies see it as an opportunity, like if humans are in the middle and they're able to produce more and their lowest performers can produce closer to our top performers, which is the big difference, then why wouldn't we just grow? Right? Why wouldn't we
Right.
just take more of the market, do more products, do more diversity of services and other things? And I think the companies that are leaning that way are finding greater success. And so, my general feedback is I'm not as worried about the job crisis because I believe on both sides, the greed of growth is going to offset some of that. And in this short term, some people are going to make decisions they'll probably regret letting
Yeah.
go some staff when they could have just, used that staff in a better way with AI.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that this is an opportunity for organizations to take a human-centric design approach to
Yeah.
everything they do, and then use this tool to get better, quicker, faster information to their customer base and client base so they can scale. So now maybe we don't have to necessarily hire a senior level position for something, and we can go a more mid-level. So we're actually opening up parts of the job market to other people who are then prompting this AI. So I think there's two sides to the coin. Obviously, the companies, and I totally agree. I think the companies who are going to start laying people off, which we've seen a good bit of that this year for whether it was AI related or not, we saw a lot of
Sure.
layoffs in the tech
It's a bit
industry.
obfuscated, but true. Yeah.
Yeah, and whether or not that trend continues into 24 and beyond because of AI, I think is still to be seen. But I think at some point people are going to not want to do business with artificial intelligence, and I think that the pendulum will swing back to the
I don't
human.
know about that. Like let's talk about remote work, right?
Mhm.
In a simpler factor. So of course we know like whether we want to admit it or not, digital avatars is a great example, right? So digital avatars, 75% of all marketing comms in 2025 will be digital avatar. They'll have a digital avatar component. And that's from like 2%, and now what I think we're at 20% or something in most numbers now. So there's a huge growth in that category, right? And think of like what that means, right? An actor or an influencer or podcast, right? Like
Mhm.
these are human to human interactions. But what ends up happening is if I or you could actually like get a good mimicry of me and be able to do it for little talk tracks. So like when I speak at a conference, I could have it introduced like, oh, I love this conference. Here's why, blah, blah, blah. It's my words. It's still what I
Mhm.
want to say, but it would save me time because I don't have to do recording, try again and again because I mess up my words or a cat meows in the background or something, right? So in that way, it can speed up the people that are doing this work, but it also means that that our reach is greater, that there's more influence. So expectations will rise, but I do think that there's disruption, in some of these categories that we're going to feel, and it'll be really hard to judge whether it's AI or if it's real or not, and that line will get more and more blurry. And I always like to use this word intent. So with remote work, we get this concern, and I think it's a real one, on authenticity of AI, right? Which I know we talked about at the event. And so this idea is like, what does AI really do? It just allows you to express your intent and have it be consumed on the other side in a more effective and accurate way, right? And so if that intent is positive, which the nice thing in work, in organizations, we assume positive intent, right? Like it's literally how businesses operate. It's the design of the philosophy of business. So you should always assume positive intent internally because that's how all of our systems for collaboration and everything work. And in that regard, it's going to help provide voice to people who don't have it, right? People, just like a Hallmark card allows my dad to write something really sweet, who he would struggle to write something like that, and I'm like, oh, why did you write this like I love you thing? And like, did you pick it out? Like, it's not a
Mhm.
Garfield card. What's going on? Are you
Right.
dying? Like, so he does that because, for him, it's an easier way to communicate, right? And it's the same thing here. AI is just like, it's like Hallmark cards where it's helping us write better and express our intent. But, there is a very real risk both in affecting businesses and especially affecting the public, which is negative intent, right? So if someone has malicious or maligned intent, it obviously can amplify those, and that's what all the hard work that a lot of researchers and these vendors like Microsoft and others have to tackle is how do we create safety, right? So that negative intent can't be greatly supported by these tools, at least not malicious intent in a way that is not effective for society. And so, social media could have brought people together more or can
Mhm.
spread us further apart. AI can do the same thing. It can help us express intent and actually bring us closer together as family and friends and work colleagues, or it can push us further apart depending on how we use it or misuse it.
Yeah, and to your point on the social media aspect with AI, is social media does both. It brings
Yeah,
us closer together, and
totally.
it does alienate us, and it does have that, evil side to it. And then how do we get through that with the artificial intelligence? I guess where I'm coming from on that is,
Please.
and I agree with everything you're saying, where I'm coming from is to a Hallmark card. So AI generates a thank you note or a letter or something, and it does have that Hallmark approach. But at some point, I believe that the Hallmark card is not as valuable as a handwritten note or a phone call. And I think that at some point the pendulum will swing to where we'll value that human interaction so much more than the artificial intelligence that we could see the importance of greater human interaction. And that's where, to your point
Yeah,
earlier,
could
when
be.
you're yeah, where you're looking at these organizations who are like, well, I'm going to scale. Well, okay, well, hopefully you're scaling for customers interaction and customer support to kind of bridge the gap between AI and and the customer. Now it's still to be seen, right? But that's kind of my thought process through that. And so let's get into
It's
oh,
hard
go
to say
ahead.
because like there's a lot of evidence that Amazon and other systems like versus like you went to the store and you knew the local store owner, right? There's a lot of evidence that our complexity and desire for quality of life, whatever you want to classify that
Mhm.
as, will drive us a certain direction there. And so that doesn't mean we can't make time for all those things. But
Yeah.
I just to use a quick example, I think there's a challenge because when we switch to remote work, right, for a lot of people, what ends up happening is instead of having like an hour commute or God forbid a couple hours on
Mhm.
each end, you now have like 1 minute separating you from time with your friends, your pets, your family, your spouse, whatever it is, your partner. So you have this immediate thing, and these people are always going to be the people you choose versus your work, where they're people you work with, right? You choose your work, but you don't choose all the people you work with. And because of that, there's always going to be a dynamic there that's challenging. And I think during the pandemic, a lot of leaders incorrectly assumed like, oh no, we're just as important. And that's not true, right? And what we want to do is we don't want people to feel work is transactional, right? We want people to be engaged, et cetera. But we also have to be realistic with our expectations on like how far that goes, right? Like just how connected people really will be at work. And so, that's like the difference between, mandating people to come to an office and network versus saying like, hey, we're going to have, effective tools and techniques to keep people connected in internal networks that are remote as those who are, physically close to an office and have that ability. So yeah, sorry, continue on.
No, you're dead on. I totally agree with that. And I'm glad you brought us into that segue, because that's where I was heading next. Was the pandemic forced us remotely, whether some people liked it and some people didn't. And I assume that you, like me, had already been working remotely in some capacity prior to. And so it wasn't a total culture shock to our industry like it was others.
Totally. Yeah.
And so that idea that work is done in an office building and I have to see you in your seat and I have to shake your hand in the morning, that was like this, it was just this, what do I do? How do I manage my people? And now we're starting to see people say, hey, we got to go back because business is done in the office. And, it was that full remote. We care about you, your mental health and all that. And now it's come on back because, this is the way that I feel comfortable managing. And so I would love your opinion on that, to say,
Yeah.
is that a healthy approach? Is it an okay approach? Is that,
I think, of all the areas of employee experience, I think management is the most affected post-pandemic, right? Because during pandemic, everyone's flexible with it. We're all doing what we call digital first response, right? So, and no one's doing things the way they optimally would. They're just trying to survive and do the best they can. Since then, it's not an excuse anymore, right? So now we need to have effective digital management, even if you're on site, because you have hybrid work and you have, more work is digital, period. So those two things have led to a big investment in the marketplace in digital management, employee experience for management, employee management experiences. And you've seen some really interesting innovation there, right? I mentioned Viva Goals earlier, right? You can use that for Copilot, and it gives you access to goals by using Copilot. Helps you build goals, things like that, access the platform more. But there's actually a lot of other stuff too, right? So if we take a simple example, AI is really accelerating this, because what it does, remember, is it gives you access to skills you don't have. So one of the very common use cases that you'll play with yourself when you eventually use it in your own work is you'll probably say like, hey, what happened yesterday with this customer?
yeah,
Or what happened yesterday, with Jude's work. Jude is someone I work with. I want to know what's Jude been up to, and tell me like last week. And so this is stuff I could go look up. I could go look up a SharePoint and find out like what activities have they updated, what documents have they changed, because I have access to these things, right? It's just no one looks at those analytics, right? So we have all this data, and now Copilot makes it extremely accessible. It gives us that superpower of rationalizing over that. And so it'll summarize, Jude updated these documents, made these changes. Here's some emails that are, pretty topical with Jude that are important. So it helps me summarize that. And a good manager is going to look at that and go, great, now I don't have to have what I call a low value collaboration meeting with Jude, because a low value collaboration meeting is transactional. It's me saying, hey, Jude, where are we with these things, right? It's me getting information from Jude, but Jude's not really getting much from me, right? And opposite, sometimes Jude needs the same thing. What's going on with these announcements? It's the same thing. If we can make it so that we can help each other through AI agents, where that can be the low value somewhat to offset the low value collaboration, that gives us more time for high value collaboration. Now, in the high value collaboration, I'm more informed. So I can say things like, hey, Jude, I think you did this, right? Because I saw this document check, and she's like, yeah, I worked on that. It's like, hey, I think there's more of that work coming. How can I help you be more prepared for that? What can I do to, help with capacity, whatever, right? So now we're having this really great proactive management discussion, right? Which is a better experience for Jude. It's a better experience for me, but it's only possible with AI, because without it, there's that tax I have to pay in catching up and communication overhead and things like that. And so what we're seeing is, in this post-generative AI era, between the innovations we've seen with like, Microsoft Goals, Viva Insights, Viva, a lot of these Viva portfolio capabilities, Viva Pulse, et cetera, fit under this. They improve the way we manage, get insights, feedback, direct signals, indirect signals, learn about how we're working. And then when you use AI, instead of this being really untractable, very hard to figure out, it can really predict and guide, us to improve. And that, we're still the pilot, but that really changes the dynamic. And I've never been as bullish or as excited as I have been about the way management will change over the years than with AI. Because, here's the other thing, the best scenario is when we use facts and data, right? Data over dogma. And the reality is these AI systems are all about data, right? They're about making it more accessible, more visible, easier to understand. And so I'm finding even people who I've struggled with years to try and educate, they'll use in a meeting, they'll use their Copilot, because each of us have our own Copilot. They'll say, are there any unresolved questions about X? Or they'll say, how do people feel about this? And it'll interpret based on the language and words and the transcript of what people said, and someday maybe even other input. It'll say like, hey, here's what I've observed right from this. And again, it's not like I don't have access to that data. I just don't have time or maybe the skills, right, to do psychoprofiling and other things, like to figure out like, is this the right way to frame things? And it could be incorrect. I'm still the pilot, but it's so valuable because it gives me data and insights I didn't have before that can, again, just empower new scenarios, right? New ways that I can manage or work with people. So yeah, I'm really bullish on management. And I think AI is absolutely going to be a force for good there. And because I'm confident that the privacy pattern has been solved a little bit, like we have had Viva Insights now, what's called workplace analytics. This is like, how many hours you spend after hours on unscheduled calls versus scheduled ones, all that type of data. What they do is they anonymize it by population groups, and there's a bunch of other stuff they do as well. So it's actually really secure and private, where you can't determine who did what and like when they did it. It's literally impossible. We've been trying to do it for years, trying to break it. There's no way we've been able to do it. And that same pattern works for Pulse, which is these like diversity inclusion surveys or employee engagement surveys, same thing, where you can only do it if you have a certain number of people that you can survey, where they can guarantee they can create fake data and they put it in. It doesn't change the percentage, doesn't change the average, but you can't actually tell who said what because it just mixes the data up, right? And so there's these things that you do now that truly are like private, that truly are confidential, while also giving us data. And I think that that's a really powerful combination, and should be used. I'm sure people will make mistakes, of course, but generally should be a really big force for good.
Yeah, I'm excited about AI in the same way, and I've made comparisons on this show and then in talking with others, is when business intelligence and business analytics came out, it was kind of scoffed out in the beginning to say like, why do I need graphs and maps and charts and all this stuff to understand my data? Like I know my business, kind of a thing.
Sure.
And so we saw the impact that things like Power BI has had on the industry and data warehouses and cleansing your data and all of that. And I look at AI or machine learning or whatever you want to call it in the same capacity, where we always had analytics in a sense where we could Google or Bing something and we could look for statistics, but those weren't our statistics, right? And then the analytics and the Power BIs came out, and now we have a strong grasp on what we've done the last 3 years or what our MRR is. And I look at AI the same way, whereas if you're using ChatGPT online or Bing Enterprise, while those are great tools, Copilot offers such a impact because it's your data, and you can ask it about, to your point, what you were saying earlier is what's going on with the McGregor account, or when was the last time we had a touch point, or how many deals do we have closing this month? And I don't have to bug my team and get them onto another meeting, right? Because remote work, we saw such an uptick in meetings. So I'm excited. I'm just as excited as you are.
There's another dynamic at play, which is this anything to anything, right? Which is what AI also enables. And I think that's understated. So like, of course, in comms, right? You could take a I want to communicate something to you. I can, do images now with DALL-E 3 and other tools, right? Bing chat, bing.com/create, right? Go try it out for
Mhm.
free. So you can create like awesome imagery and content, and of course write better and do all those things.
Is that
And
DALL-E 3? Is that what that is?
DALL-E 3, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that one. There's a lot of different tools, Midjourney, et cetera. But at the Stable Diffusion, but the end of the day, what it's doing is it's anything to anything, text to image, image to video, image to text. These are all like many to many, X to X, right? So, or X to Y. So that's the idea of the anything to anything. And we're seeing that in the AI world, how it changes the way we work, because we have different preferences, and there's different, times where video is better, or where text is better, and image is better. And similarly, it also unlocks new scenarios. So my favorite one that I've been running into recently, how you have like a website or an intranet or something, and you'll have heat maps, and you'll
Yeah.
like track like clicks. So one of the techniques we've done for years is this thing called journey mapping. You record a screen session, right, of a user, and then you like look at all these recordings and you figure out like how they spent this long on this section. It took them a while to find this. Like you make a bunch of observations, right? And it's so easy because it's just video, so it's like really easy to make all these intuitive observations. Well, you can take that with, say, Microsoft Clarity, which is a free product, and you can use it has Copilot, Microsoft Clarity Copilot, and it can translate that recording into text. So what's powerful about this is I can have like 200 sessions, which would have been, one of my heuristic, UX designers, staff or whatever would work with a customer. They can just convert all that to text. We can use AI to analyze all the text. What are the patterns? Like, where's the problem areas? Where is it working well? What are the key observations? Ask all sorts of natural questions about this, because it's hundreds and hundreds of these recordings now translated into text. And now all of a sudden that's completely unlocked, right? A thing that very few people do because it's expensive and whatever, now is arguably free, because what I'm describing is a free solution. And the Copilot extraction gets text. The only thing you're paying for is taking the text, putting it into some giant text file or something, and then inserting that into your favorite AI tool, Copilot, ChatGPT Premium or something. So when you do that, at that point, now we're able to reconcile, all these journeys and other things and use that data. And I think, what we're finding is this anything to anything is such a big enabler, because when we transitioned even to remote work, right, a lot of it was IMs and, emails and things that aren't really like, there's no comparison, being in person and even video, right? It's 2D, it's not the same. But like when you look at, Google had Starlink, right? And there's other examples like this where they have these 3D that like looks like the person's in the room with you. Obviously Microsoft has HoloLens and has avatars, and we now have mesh immersive rooms for VR. But like when you start to add those things, now you're adding those dimensions that are missing. What makes that really compelling is if I can have the flexibility of whatever format I prefer, and then be able to convert that, so that I can meet you in your preferred medium, based on my availability, based on where I am, noise, all other things like that. That's a really big combination that I do think eventually trumps any in person, because once you start to have, all these other benefits, then you're not going to feel like you're missing it. And I've seen it. Obviously, we're lucky. We have HoloLens. Like most of our staff have played with them, or we've done work with customers. So I've done like the holoportation. You have the headset on, but it's in this room, and then I can see you right over here, and like you have a sense of presence because I can see you in the room, right? There's a change in the way we rationalize things, like the evolution of us, and